lies.
Hey guys, Rob from Georgia here with you, aka VHS82 apostrophe. I am your Wednesday evening host here at a place called BodyBags. Yeah, week 492. It is theme week. Never mind me, got a couple boys with strep throat. It's been a long weekend, and so we're going to hit this to the quick. But it is theme week. Compliments of Chris, our Friday reviewer, who came up with this idea of cheap incarnational horror. Basically, we are going after rip-offs of the original classic. And yours truly decided last week, of course, to take a look at Bloody Murder. And this week, of course, working towards Bloody Murder 2. There is no 3. Which is just two's interesting, but let's get into. Rob Spera does the directing here. You might know him from Witchcraft, 1988. This is an 03 film, Bloody Murder 2: Closing Camp, the full title, and definitely a knockoff of Friday the 13th. It does offer up a couple interesting things. This is, of course, a Mainline releasing, and Lionsgate put out this nice little, this was only $7-8 or something, I want to say. I think it was that cheap. And I do believe every one of them is a rip. Well, Junior, I'm not sure. Maybe. But they're all, pretty sure they're all rip-offs. Anyways, Katy Woodruff plays our lead girl, Tracy. And Tiffany Shepis, who would go on to be in a zillion things. I don't think I wrote anything down, but I took a, she plays Angela, and she's in a ton of, she became sort of a scream queen in her own right. Just a huge list of stuff. A couple things about this movie. Okay, if you remember Bloody Murder, there was absolutely like no nudity, no, really no gore to speak of at all. This one does attempt very hard to make up in a big way for the lack of those two things in the previous entry. Does it make a better movie? Not necessarily. So, you know, if you saw the first one and you haven't seen the second one yet, and you thought, man, I could just, this is made for TV, I can run this any time of the day, you can't really do it with this one. Tiffany Shepis really, she carries the weight here in terms of the nudity, and she pretty much is the only one. And there's a bit of it. And the gore, we got legs being cut off, and there's a great a chainsaw through the chest from the backside. So there is some, definitely the gore has been ramped up. The story's I'm going to say the story is intriguing. It leaves itself open to some really wild interpretations of things going on, some suggestive things. Okay, so I'm just going to go right in and real quick and hammer this thing out. Spoilers. I'm just going to lay it all out there. You know, if I remember it, because this is a pretty convoluted mess of 2 movies, but it does seem like you have potentially 3 killers out and about. First one, of course, you had the camp counselor who is doing the dirty deed. But then apparently somewhere in the background, you do have Trevor Morehouse, the camp boogeyman character. He's our Jason Voorhees, I think, character. Or maybe Mrs. Voorhees and Jason Voorhees sort of, I don't know, that whole thing wrapped up in one maybe. He is an interesting in terms of where they bring him in and where he comes in. And then, of course, in the second one, his dad, who is the sheriff. Now, I did say spoilers. So, Dad says something interesting. When he's with Tracy in the car towards the end of the movie, and he basically unloads the great reveal, why, you know, the fact that it is him and why he's doing it and everything. He confesses to killing her brother. That's one of the underlining things going on is Tracy, why on earth would you go to a camp where 5 years earlier your brother disappeared? Now, it's one thing if you're going there to try to ascertain what happened to him, but there's no real big emphasis on that at all. So it just sort of leaves it out there like, why are you even here again? But Trevor's dad admits to Tracy killing her boyfriend Jason at the end, of course, at the end of the first Bloody Murder. which means he's out there. The camp counselor is spitting out there. And then, of course, in the background, you do have this camp boogeyman Trevor character who has an interesting appearance towards the end of this film that leaves one wondering exactly what is going on here. I mean, if I remember right, Trevor was the victim of a prank gone bad, was locked up in an insane asylum, and then apparently disappeared maybe, and then suddenly appears at the camp. I think does some killing maybe, but I think that might have been the beginning part of the first Bloody Murder. So, and the interesting thing about Bloody Murder 2 is it's not, the camp counselors aren't there before camp, they're there closing up camp, hence the title, Closing Camp, right? Which, you know, so I mean, it does offer some interesting ideas that are never fleshed out, which is unfortunate. But then with a movie this low budget, independent sort of film, you probably don't have a whole lot of, I would have much rather, actually, now, yeah, I would have loved to see the gore ramped up as it was, but some of the other stuff, I would have loved to see more attention placed on some of the backdrop of just this, I don't know, the idea that you have multiple killers overlapping one another. I don't know, it just seems like I would have wanted to have it clarified a little bit more in terms of what really was happening, you know, which makes Friday the 13th so great, because the first film is such a wonderful, absolutely, and just a great film in terms of laying the foundation, not having any idea what was going to come after it, of course, with the introduction of Jason. And then, I mean, he is like our modern day universal monster, right? Our Frankenstein sort of esque monster, which really just took on a life of its own. Trevor Morehouse is never going to become that, and these two films are never going to become that. But the thing that Friday the 13th does lay down is nice as a foundation in which then suddenly they built off and took off. Now, this was never going to be that, but I wish there would have been a little bit more attention. They sort of later, you know, paid to some of these things. But it is in there. And then, of course, you have Tracy having the dreams of involving Trevor, involving Jason, but some of them are misleading, her brother Jason, but right? But some of them are misleading because she actually has a dream that the counselor in this film is the killer, which he isn't. And so you just have a lot of, I don't know, just interesting things going on in the background, I guess. And so, look, you know, these two movies, am I going back to these? I don't know. I mean, but it did make for a very interesting sort of 2-week experience, and toward it, you know, it's in the sense of just, you know, watching through them and just trying to see what these two directors were attempting to do. And it does beg, if there is ever a third piece, what would you do? Maybe let Trevor finally have his own movie where he is front and center, because he does show this weird thing at the end of the second film where he takes his angst out on his own dad. Now, why is that? Is this a kid who really, isn't fueled? I don't know. It's just, I don't know, man. It's an interesting thing. John Colton, who plays Sheriff Miller, who ultimately is Trevor's dad and the killer, he does fine. The other characters do fine, and of course this is all taking place at Camp Placid Pines, right? This is your Camp Crystal Lake place. So it is interesting. I don't know what else to say other than if you don't mind low budget, independent, sort of rip off, cheap, as we're calling it, incarnational horror films. There are so many out there, right? Anytime a good movie a movie comes out, big one, Walmart is sure to have 2 or 3 rip-offs of it on the shelf like that. So anyways, I say check it out if you got nothing better to do. At least, you know, if you like that kind of thing. If not, just stick to the classics. But I'm curious, all week long as these drop, we'll be looking at a lot of movies that attempted, for better or worse, to rip off a film or franchise. And we'll see how this week continues to fall into place. What do we got? April coming up. I think the two main days are yes, second weekend is 1968, so all films from 1968 that week, and then we'll close out the month with Shudder exclusive as our theme week. So look forward to April for sure. Ought to be good. As always, we end these things off with Go Bills.
This is not